was like, how do you become an architect? He wanted to know.
It's like you just write a lot of code.
So what did you tell him?
I became an architect. In the beginning, I wanted to be one, so trying to invest some effort, trying to act as an architect, even not being still an architect. Then committing mistakes, of course, because I really didn't have the experience to be an architect, so committing mistakes by arrogance, by ignorance, by several. But then realizing what was wrong and fix that.
Two things primarily. One is an interest in technology breadth, and second is basically good communication skills, because you have to be able to communicate technology to a wide variety of audiences. Some folks may be developers, other folks may be executives, and the whole range of people in between.
Architecture is part science and part art. So you need to be logical when you need to be logical, and you need to be creative when it's an art.
And actually, the architectural and technical skills are really interesting because you don't need to know everything. Nobody can know everything, it's not possible, right? And so what you actually need to know is you need to know some areas where there are problem areas in depth. But you don't need to know anything else about that. So you need to know, for instance, what the issue is with J2E. What is it, it's the problem? And you need to know where they're going to fix that problem. Okay? Because that's going to be the key thing when you're talking to somebody else. You need to know what the issues are in management, okay, instrumentation, and where the industry's going. But you don't need to know all the details about how to make API calls in Headland. You don't need to do that. So it's really interesting because getting that level of skill is the thing that I think most people find really, really difficult.
Beyond anything else, probably experience. I think pretty much all architects are different. I would say that no architects are the same in terms of their skills, in terms of what they're capable of, but I think all of the good architects have in common is years of experience, and that in turn kind of helps them to kind of see the kind of bigger picture.
Logical thinking. A couple of things, good communication skills. You need to be able good understanding of organisational skills as well. You need to understand how companies work, how people work, and you need to have a good understanding of technology. What your job is really about is about people and technology to a great extent. And so you have to know how people think and how they work in an organisation and how an organisation thinks. You have to think about the same thing with technology. You have to understand how the technology works and how that's put into bigger systems as well. And then how do those things match together? And how do you communicate from one to the other?
Being an architect implies to commit some mistakes first, but realize that and admit later, you know? So of course, you can commit mistakes all your life, but that is not the problem. The problem is when you never learn how to stop committing the same mistake over and over and over.
What most people find difficult, and probably is the most difficult part in many ways, is doing the abstraction. Because if you do a good set of models and abstractions, then the problem becomes very easy. If you do it badly, then it's a real mess. And actually getting that level of abstraction views for both communication and sorting complexity is it's probably the most difficult, but it's actually the most interesting as well. Because what you're doing is you sit there with a whiteboard, you're saying, okay, how does this work? What do I need to think about? What are all the challenges? How do I do all the balancing between the bits? So it's the most difficult piece, especially it's the piece that's very difficult to learn, but it's actually a piece that is the core of being an architect.
Start looking at building like real mission critical type applications.
Yeah.
And I think writing code is one way of just being in a trench and learning the real issues instead of trying to imagine and think about the issues in your head. You have to be in the trenches to appreciate the difficulty and the solutions. And I think it's a good way of molding the thinking process, just the problem solving. Architecture, I think, is a lot of problem solving, and there's good problem solving skills and bad problem solving skills. There's different ways of looking at things. That can you look at things in a way that's logical but yet outside the box? That not everybody look at things the same way.
to become an architect, really invest personal time in reading a lot, in reading the different point of view about different ways to solve the same problem, because the typical mistake we commit as an architect, of course, is the sin of arrogance. So your solution actually is the solution. You don't need to learn anything else. So actually the best practice on that is all the time try to argue against yourself, try to play the role of the devil advocate, try to find some new ways to solve the same problem, even if you consider that the battle is over. That implies some time you need to invest. Of course, that is difficult to find that time. Of course, also you have to participate in forums, in discussion forums, and of course the golden rule is experience all of that. Don't talk and nothing else. You need to experience that. You know, you need to prove in practice that your ideas, your thoughts are really make sense.
Listening. The first one's listening. It's really weird. Everybody's coming from a different direction, and you can't ever communicate with somebody unless you know roughly where they're coming from. So you go around here, and some people here are devs, some people are IT people. They've all got different backgrounds. You really have to understand where they're coming from. Because to a great extent, architecture is about there's no one answer and there's no right answer. There's huge numbers of different views into a problem space. You have this big space, and you can look at it from lots of different points of view. And you have to understand where somebody else is looking at it. And then you can align yourself alongside it and you say, oh, I see what you're seeing, and I see the issues you have. Now, if you look at it from a slightly different perspective, then you'll solve that. You can see a solution to that problem. So you start off by listening, and then the same thing is enabling them to see the problem from a different point of view, from a different perspective.
You cannot give up. You must not give up. You have to continue the race. You have to deal with frustration in order to never abandon. So, and I'm confident that someday you will arrive. I have a lot of examples, not just myself, but also a lot of friends of mine that I knew them when they were just junior developers, and I can say nowadays that they are proven architects in the sense that they can apply for the certification because they have now the background, the knowledge, and the job done in order to apply for it.